For updates on global economic stories, Rochus Odiri joins us now. Good morning, Rochus.
Good morning, Dr. Ayo, Rufai, viewers. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, so first off, as far as the Asian markets are concerned, there's been mixed as a result of data, more weak data coming out of China. And so, yeah, there's some stocks in the positive region, some down, falling. If we look at the China data, China now has had 5 consecutive months of weak imports, and also look at their exports. So year on year, 14% drop. The estimates were for a 13% drop, so they underperformed the estimates. Imports year on year, 12.4% drop. The estimates were for 5 from 6. So you've continued to see weakness around the global economy that is reflecting on China's weak trade data. So you can also see, as far as the metric, as far as the actuals and the estimates, $80 billion for the trade surplus for China. Trade surplus 80 billion, estimates was for 70. We move from there to, I believe, Europe or the United States. Moody's in Europe. In the United States, they've downgraded 10 regional banks. They took a big hit over SVB and what happened in March. Wow. There are still concerns over whether or not they've got the capital, adequacy ratios to be able to withstand another shock. So, the number of banks have been downgraded there in the United States. And I think, the futures, as far as the S&P and a number of other indexes, will reflect that when the markets open. To Europe, Italy, their cabinet has approved a 40% windfall tax on their banks. And they've essentially said this is limited to 2023. They have criticized the European Central Bank for continuing to raise interest rates. They're saying that it has caused mortgages to rise and it has impacted the disposable income of the average Italian citizen. So what do? Well, they go ahead and they slam this 40% tax, again, limited to this year on the banks. And with respect to how the banks, the Italian banks have performed, some of them have performed quite well because those same interest rate hikes from the ECB has led to an increase in net interest income for these banks, which is basically the difference between the interest you earn on your securities, that money they've invested, versus what they are paying out to depositors that have accounts with them. So banks like UniCredit, as far as their performance, UniCredit, BPR Banca, Banco BPM, Intesa Sanpaolo, and they've all done pretty well with margins of about 70% or more. So they've done all right. Then to Africa, I think Doctor already referenced this. At Ted Opita's side, he's in the aviation business, talking about the closure of the Niger Republic airspace, increasing the cost of flights from Nigeria to Europe, as if they weren't already high enough already. It's as if Burkina Faso and Mali join in, then they're going to be even higher. And looking at the map, I think we have a map from one of the, from Flight Radar. And if you're zooming in there, all the little yellow planes, you can see the impact and fact that the purple lines are moving. It's like a roadblock if you're driving down an expressway and a particular main route that you travel to is blocked and you don't have to move. So you see all the flights and how from northern Nigeria going towards Europe, Niger's airspace, and again, this is a very large country in terms of its landmass. Now, we also circled Mali and Burkina Faso because if they then decide that, they've already talked about their allegiance in the blue circle and the yellow circle, Mali and Burkina Faso. If they then join, you can mentally try and draw your own lines around those 3 countries. That is if they were to join in on the closure of the airspace, what that would mean. So now all of a sudden the aviation sector is back in conversation on the African continent, particularly Nigeria. So the Punch has a pretty good article where they're talking about the central bank's FX sales to international airlines. Q1 150 billion, that actually should be dollars, that's in dollars. Q2 you had $1 billion, Q3 1.3, Q4 887 million. So in total about 3.7 billion is what has been given to airlines to try to repatriate. But that is for 2022. Still, despite what has been sold, you still have, as for April of this year, we talked about this, the IATA, in terms of the blocked funds that are in a number of countries. Nigeria still leads, right? And so IATA is still saying that this is an issue. So the Punch talked to a number of aviation players that were all talking about, okay, how the domestic players can compete with international players in terms of whether or not we need a regional a flag carrier. So there's some quotes here for some players in the sector. This is Olumide Onuayo, who is the head of research at Zenith Travel, saying the Fly Nigeria Act did not see the light of day. The capital flights will continue until we build airlines that can compete and meet the standards that international airlines can partner. Remember the Fly Nigeria Act, that of course said that if you're a public official, you are mandated to fly on a domestic airline wherever you're going. There are limitations to that, of course. It says you cannot say until you have a national carrier, it is better to have flag carriers, the more the merrier. We must encourage our airlines to go out and move beyond single ownership. So he's talking about partnerships with international airlines in order to improve, or rather increase market share and routes. Domestic Nigerian airlines must open up ownership, and management should support this. Then we can now start to talk about the Fly Nigeria Act. We have another quote from another player in the aviation sector, Mr. Bernard Bankole, CEO of Finch Glow Holdings Limited. He said the key concern is whether these domestic Nigerian airlines possess the capacity to effectively manage the additional foreign routes that they request. Because look, even with this whole FX repatriation issue and the fact that airlines are pricing their tickets more to meet up with where the parallel market is in order for them not to have their funds trapped is part of why we're seeing these high fares. And now with this Niger matter now, that's even going to increase some more. Got to get to Oppenheimer. I finally found a 3-hour window to see this film. And the lessons from this movie are so strong. If you have 3 hours, go and see this film. One, education is the bedrock of economic power, right? Research and development must be continued. The US in 1940-something, when they were building this bomb, which was based on the power of their scientists and the intelligence of their scientists, in competition with Russian scientists and German scientists and the British scientists, it was an arms race, right? Prominent universities were mentioned in this film: Cambridge, Oxford, Harvard, MIT, and it was so riveting. And basically, if you look at the last point about science and technology separating winners and losers, what is the arms race today? It's the US placing export curbs on chips to China, China trying to build their own chips within their own region, Intel signing a deal with Germany to build a chip plant there. And again, we in this part of the world, we're just onlookers. We're talking about it on the news, where they are at the forefront of another race in technology. And until we get the universities that can compete with these guys, we'll continue to be onlookers. We'll continue to look at all the phones on this table. Speaking of phones, let's get to cash on hand for a number of companies. Earnings season is almost at the end, right? This is raw cash, raw cash and convertible cash securities. Apple, as of Q2, has $167 billion of cash. That is 4 times Nigeria's FX reserves. Alphabet has 118. I mean, just look at the numbers. Microsoft 111, Samsung 83 billion. It continues with Intel, Amazon, Meta. This is, again, it is back to education, research and development, and how the technological advancement flows through from governments to companies and pushes the power of the West. We're talking about war possible war in Niger. Yesterday, when I was talking to you about oil prices spiking, the Ukraine is waging war with Russia using drones. And El Rufai, whose his confirmation is being held right now. I remember when El Rufai was saying that if we want to beat bandits in Nigeria, we must use drones. You can take out those junta folks in Niger without even putting a single boot on the ground there by using technology. So a couple of things said about Oppenheimer, and I just hope that the government gets to listen and not fight ASU. It starts by investing even in the basic one as regards ASU. Also putting money in technology, because another thing you never said, Rhodes, is that bomb, as at 1940-something of the Manhattan Project, cost over $2 billion. As at $4 billion. As at then. And you can see how the very best brains, were brought out there. And I hear we don't have time, so we need to go. We invest in education. Invest in pure education. And simple. Yeah. And there's so lot to say. We'll sit. Thank you.
3 hours Oppenheimer.
Go and see it.
Yeah,
see it twice. Good movie.
Fantastic.
Yeah.